Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Putting America first, second, and third. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, November 17th, 2015. Getting into the week, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, 877-300-7645. Tom is sitting in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Alrighty, now getting on back to last Friday's false flag attack in Paris, and it's becoming more and more obvious that it was a false flag attack here. Witness statements regarding the diners who were shot described their assailants as white guys, clean-shaven. They drove up in a black Mercedes-Benz, as opposed to a Toyota pickup truck, and just blazed away. And apparently they made a point of firing at anybody they thought might be taking video of them. And it doesn't sound like Syrian refugees to me. It sounds like a professional hit squad. And remember, one of them was described as clearly having a military bearing in the handling of his weapon. Alrighty, let's see. Now then. Apparently, everybody on planet Earth except the U.S. government knew this attack was about to happen. Turkey warned France twice about the terrorist attacker and was completely ignored. It's kind of like how the FBI was given the complete plan for the Pearl Harbor attack in August of 1941 by a British double agent, and they just laughed at him, threw it away. French and German intelligence services knew Paris attack was coming a month ago, but apparently didn't do anything about it, and we are getting more and more confirmation that Jewish community centers and other facilities received the warning that morning, the attack, large terrorist attack. Now, a lot of people are starting to analyze this thing, saying, you know, it's being bandied around as this huge tragedy, how terrible, and it was. Let's not, you know, but the idea is the context. And the context is Paris has been part of the U.S. war on terror, meaning the U.S. war on Arabs living over oil the U.S. covets. And so we're seeing a lot of articles like this one over at RIMF.com. Paris totally expected, no surprise. You don't go and bomb other people's countries for a decade and not expect them to be upset about it. That's if you buy the official story, which I don't here. And one of the reasons I don't, it has come to light that for 48 hours prior to and during the terrorist nudge, nudge, wink, wink attack, French security's computer system was subject to a very sophisticated hack attack. More than just straightforward denial of service. They're basically saying the nature of the attack targeted a weakness in infrastructure hardware. They knew something was in the hardware that could be exploited. And they're saying this kind of an attack is beyond the capability of most individuals. It's beyond the capability of ISIS. This smacks of a nation state being involved in paralyzing France's security services while this is being carried out. Now, the other day we were reporting on this girl from California who was supposedly killed in the attacks, and apparently, according to Mexican media, after it was all over, she used her boyfriend's cell phone to call her family and say, hey, I'm okay. And now we're getting a story that a man from Spain, who was claimed to be one of the victims, is very much alive. In fact, in 2012, he'd moved 300 miles away to Strasbourg, where he lives with his girlfriend, and he found all these tributes and condolences on his Facebook page, and he quickly put out, hey, I'm here, I'm alive. And he called his mother because apparently the French security services had gone to his parents' home and said, we're sorry, your son was killed in the terror attacks. And he said, no, I'm not. A lot of weird things going on here. And there's an article we just put up from INFOWARS, the Mohammed Atta syndrome, because one of the supposed suicide bombers in Paris, Ibrahim Adelslam, okay, was, obviously fanatic, Islamic fanatic willing to blow himself up and go and see Allah and get his 47 raisins or whatever the deal is here. His ex-wife was interviewed by the Daily Mail and said he was out of work, he liked to do drugs, he never went to a mosque, and he only observed Ramadan when he was being forced to. This is a repeat of Muhammad Atta, who was this big, fanatical Islamic terrorist that we were all being told about. And then we find out he drinks, does drugs, lived with a stripper. His real life doesn't fit the image of somebody willing to blow himself up to make a point and go see Allah. Now, the warhawks are out there warhawking. Jeb Bush was on Morning Joe saying, this is the war of our time, and I fear he may be right. This is the doorstep to World War III. That's what they're aiming at. And Jeb Bush was out there, and according to this article, he was such an obvious warmonger. He's pushing for World War III, and, you know, heaven help us if he ever gets elected president, which, looking at his poll numbers, I don't think is going to happen unless a lot of the other candidates get really depressed and go for walks in suburban Washington, D.C. parks, or have a series of unfortunate small plane accidents, which has been known to happen in years past. Jeb Bush is also calling for the immediate restoration of the NSA surveillance program because nothing is going to protect you from terrorists faster than constant surveillance on the law-abiding citizenry. And the reality is, the mass surveillance system we have all had to endure in violation of the Bill of Rights has never thwarted a terror attack. Not once. We're assured that it somehow dealt with this vaporous threat we're told was out there and they got rid of, but they've never actually stopped a terror attack cold in its track and said, here are the terrorists, here's the bomb or the germs or the chemicals. It hasn't happened. And of course, a lot of people like me are out there saying, doesn't the fact that Paris happened prove, I mean, if you buy the official story, doesn't it prove that all this spying on law-abiding citizens of all these countries is absolutely pointless? And unfortunately, John Brennan is out there and is saying the reason mass surveillance doesn't work to find the terrorists is all the fault of those people criticizing mass surveillance. And if we would just shut up and let them peek into our lives and steal our business secrets, the terrorists would be stopped. Hasn't worked so far. But that's the spin. The reason the NSA, CIA, FBI had no idea Paris was about to happen is all the fault of those of us who cling to that outdated, antiquated Bill of Rights thing. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a quick phone call. Squid in Canada, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I just want to say thank you. I've been listening to you for about 2 years, but I went from a first grader to a senior in high school that quickly. And I just want to say, don't you think Putin just made a good chess move?
Yes, he did. And I'm going to get into that when we start talking about the Metrojet crash, because now the official investigators have come out and said, yes, it was a bomb. And now that the official investigators are saying it, that's fine. And we're going to talk about that because, yeah, Putin used this and he's using it very, very effectively. And we're going to get into that, okay?
Yep. That's all I want to say.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Iran has issued yet another call for the West to stop supporting terrorist groups in Syria. See, everybody knows it now. The United States, Great Britain, France, all these countries are state sponsors of terror, which we used to be told that was a bad thing. In fact, that was one of the constant allegations against Iran. You know, they may not have invaded anybody, but they're a state sponsor of terror, and that's why you've got to hate them. Well, under that same rule, I guess we can all hate our local government now because they're exposed as state sponsors of terror. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go ahead and grab a quick phone call here. Steve in Massachusetts. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. First of all, I just heard that commercial for the body armor. And we can find a way to get the non-destructive passports and incorporate that into body armor. I think we may make millions.
Yeah, we just, and all of our first responders and everything, they don't need those big, heavy, fireproof suits. We just wrap them in that passport paper and everything's going to be fine.
Absolutely.
In fact, we ought to build our buildings and airplanes out of that stuff.
Oh yeah, cars, everything. It's great. It's miraculous how they seem to survive every time. I want to talk to you about gold. What do you think their plan is? Because everyone knows the dollar is going to collapse, and they want to come out with a new money system. And the way they gave the gold to China, what would the plan be?
They didn't give the gold to China. They sold it, and China wants to buy gold. And with all the debt the U.S. government already owes China, that gives China a great deal of leverage. And China may have actually received, a far better deal than other people would. The reason gold is being sort of discarded institutionally is very simple, because it is a reliable store of value, and that is a threat to those whose livelihood depend on fluid, flexible currencies that are open to manipulation. And we know that China and Russia are getting ready to open their own gold market. They will not rely on the London Daily Fix. They're going to basically sell the gold for what people are willing to pay for it. The reason gold prices and silver prices have been artificially kept down, even as demand is going up and supplies are limited, is because if gold were to start to really climb in value, people would close down those negative interest rate savings accounts they have, and they'd start buying gold, or they'd empty their stock portfolios, which are overpriced and underperforming, and they'd go into gold. And right now, the major gold bullion banks like J.P. Morgan Chase and the Federal Reserve, they're trying to buy as much physical gold as they can to make good on all the gold that was stored in their facilities, but it is not actually their property. But they started to treat it like it was their property, and the gold is now gone, and they're trying to get it back because more and more nations are saying, hey, we want our gold repatriated. And every time one of these nations says that, the Federal Reserve and J.P. Morgan and the Bank of England and the Bank of France, they all shuffle their feet and say, well, it's going to take us a few years.
They must have had a plan, though, when they were giving away, not giving away, but selling their gold, knowing they know that gold is worth, money, and they know that
gold has wealth. It's a great store of wealth. I don't think there was a plan. Unfortunately, you need to get rid of this idea that there is a master plan for all that's going on. There isn't. There are competing agendas. You've got this group that is trying to prop up the stock market, this group that's trying to start a war, this group that's trying to open the borders for immigration, and as you can see on those last two, they're in conflict with each other. I think those who were selling gold to China were simply, selling their gold at a really good price. And I don't think there was any more of a plan than to basically sell the gold at a better price, because China was probably offering more for it than you can get here in the United States of America. In fact, we already know that in many parts of the world, gold is actually trading above the London Fix. What they'll do is they'll say, this is the spot price, but we're paying a premium to get the physical.
Now, there's back in the 80s, the Economist magazine came up with a phoenix on the cover of the Economist magazine, rising from the ashes of burning dollar bills, and the phoenix had a gold medallion with 2018 on there. You think that has anything to do with what's coming, or?
Well, I mean, everybody knows that when the dollar actually does collapse, the price of gold denominated in those dollars is going to go right through the roof. For that matter, so will silver. For that matter, so will a Big Mac. So will a gallon of gas. We'll be in Weimar-style hyperinflation, where it's going to take a whole box of paper notes just to buy a loaf of bread. I think one of the reasons the government is looking the other way at all these sky-high salaries and bonus packages for CEOs is they're using that as a cash sink to try and prevent inflationary pressures from causing more damage than they already are. Because as the Federal Reserve creates the new money and dumps it into the economy, you need a cash sink to take it back out again. And that is being accomplished by the 1%. It's making them insanely wealthy. And they get to go on playing their game that this is a working economy. Okay?
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Michael.
All right, we're going to let you go here. Now then, back to the war zones. Iranian Supreme Leader's Deputy Chief of Office for International Affairs, Ayatollah Mohsen Khomeini, condemned the attacks in Paris. In fact, pretty much all the Muslims all over the world are condemning it. It was horrific. But he says it happened as a backfiring of the West's support for terrorist groups. You can't go on out and create and fund and train these terrorist groups and then act shocked when they commit an act of terror. Another article along the same theme from Truth News Media. Yes, Paris was a tragedy. Yet, the global terrorism from the United States mass murder machine continues to be ignored. Since the second invasion of Iraq, the death count for all these U.S. interventions and wars is now somewhere over 2 million. That's World War numbers. And it's always downplayed by the media. I mean, they're showing the people in front of Charlie Hebdo or last Friday, and that attack, and they're saying, oh, how horrible it is. And it is. But when a drone from the United States flies into a country we're not actually at war with, blows up somebody based on a profile, he's too tall or something, and a whole bunch of kids standing around him get shredded to bloody bits, that's no big deal. They're collateral damage. It's their fault they were standing next to somebody we thought might be a terrorist. And the corporate media has been absolutely complicit in this. They're going to make a big deal about the horror of a terror attack that supports the U.S. agenda, and those terror attacks carried out by the United States of America, trying to intervene in other countries, that's no big deal. You shouldn't worry about that. Let's talk about, Charlie Sheen and whether or not he's got HIV and how he may have gotten it. And it is. It's a very obvious double standard. Same thing with Israel and Palestine. Anytime an Israeli woman breaks her fingernail, it's a horrible tragedy. When they go in and shoot up a whole town full of Palestinians, they deserved it. We don't have to feel sympathy for them. All right, we got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, everybody is using the Paris false flag to push whatever their agenda is going to be. David Cameron has come on out and proposed Britain's version of the USA Patriot Act be enacted immediately. Forgetting, of course, that here in the United States of America, the USA Patriot Act subjected law-abiding citizens to huge amounts of abuse, including police torture centers, and has never found a real terrorist or stopped a terror attack. So since it's a complete and utter failure in the United States and highly destructive to the Republic, by all means, we need the same thing over there in Great Britain. British politicians are saying they need to fast-track new surveillance laws. We got to watch all the law-abiding citizens, because the more we watch the law-abiding citizens, the more scared the terrorists will be. Now then, on that same subject, remember the story that came out the other day? Oh, the reason NSA and FBI and CIA and the French intelligence and MI6 couldn't find the terror, didn't know the terror attack was coming, even though there's all mass surveillance on everything, is they were using PlayStation 4s. And we don't monitor those yet. We obviously need a law to monitor the PlayStations. Actually, as it turns out, according to this article in artstechnica.com, there is actually no evidence ISIS used the PlayStation 4s. In fact, if these are state-sponsored actors, and it appears they are, especially in light of the very sophisticated cyber attack on the French security services, they're not using cell phones or the Internet at all. They've got their own frequency-agile encrypted radios. And by now, anybody seriously considering an act of terror is going to know they can't use email, the web, cell phones, because it's penetrated. They will set up other means of communication. They'll go back to the good old-fashioned ways of dead drops and marks on mailboxes and things like that. Except for this one couple who apparently were going to do a copycat ISIS-style bombing, and then they went on Twitter to ask for suggestions for the target, which got them arrested. I think it's a hoax. It's a bogus story. Nobody's that stupid. It's amazing. David Cameron is going to formally seek approval by British Parliament to bomb ISIS in Syria, or to bomb what they're claiming is ISIS in Syria. Parliament is probably going to give it to him because Cameron has already said that even if Parliament turns him down, he's going to go ahead and do it anyway. So you might as well give me permission, because otherwise you'll have to give me forgiveness. Now, the other day, there was this huge story about how Russia was going to send 150,000 troops into Syria to finish off ISIS. That apparently was another Western propaganda hoax. The Kremlin has issued a statement saying there will be no ground forces in Russia's military operation in Syria because they're already doing a bang-up job with the cruise missiles and the aircraft. And speaking of which, Russia has bombed ISIS locations now using submarine-launched cruise missiles from the Mediterranean. This is the first time in history they've actually used these in a real war. And Russia has started long-range bombing all the way from Russia using the Tupolev 22 M3 bombers, the Backfire C version. And they're starting to hit Syria with that, showing just how far those bombers can go, which is going to make a lot of people around there very, very nervous about Russia's military reach, especially looking at the abject failure of the American military in Syria for the last going on 5 years. With Russia's help, of course, Syrian forces have now entered a key village in Aleppo, the village of Humayya al-Kabira, chasing the Takfiri out of there. They're basically recapturing their nation away from these Western-sponsored terrorist groups. Another couple of weeks here, there won't be a legitimate reason for the U.S. or France or anybody else to go into Syria. The ISIS, they're going to be gone. Now, the United States and Turkey have launched an operation to take the entire Syria-Turkey border under control. Now, that doesn't really sound like an attack on ISIS. It sounds like an encroachment into Syria, to me. And it's a reminder that while Russia is in there actually bombing ISIS, for the last year, everything the U.S. bombed saying this was an ISIS facility turned out to be a critical piece of Syrian economic infrastructure. Now, over in Serbia, police have arrested a migrant carrying the exact same passport as the one found close to the Stade de France suicide bomber, confirming that there are massive numbers of fake Syrian passports being used by the terrorists and by the refugees. And they're very good fakes. Again, state-sponsored from the quality. And they're out there saying, well, you know, they're being used by the Syrian terrorists. No, you don't know that. Given that the guy holding that passport found on the ground next to the bloody splotch isn't around anymore, you don't know if he's Syrian. Yes, fake passports are being used by somebody, maybe ISIS, maybe somebody else entirely. Don't forget the witness statement from the cafe where the diners were shot. These guys drove up in a Mercedes, white, clean-shaven, military bearing. Now, Iraq is insisting that the Paris attack was ordered directly by the leader of ISIS, al-Baghdadi. You know, that guy who had his picture taken with John McCain being buddy-buddy and smiling at each other. That Baghdadi. We need to keep reminding everybody about that. ISIS was a U.S. creation. Your tax dollars at work. Don't it make you prouder and heck to be American? And there is a point that does need to be made. The Paris attacks were as bad as they were for two reasons. The borders are wide open. Nobody is checking who's coming into countries. And disarming the law-abiding civilian population doesn't make them safer. Do you really think these guys would have gone into Paris to shoot up cafes and restaurants and everything if they thought there was a real possibility somebody's going to shoot back at them? Now, there's an article over in thenation.com, what I discovered from interviewing imprisoned ISIS fighters. And what this journalist found out is that these are not Muslim religious fanatics. They're simply kids who have spent their childhood in American war zones. And that, of course, has filled them with rage against America. They don't hate us for our freedoms. They hate us because while growing up, there was a loud bang, and people they'd known all their lives were lying in bloody shreds all around their feet, and the shrapnel was stamped Made in America. Now, the Dalai Lama has come on out with a very interesting comment about some of the reactions we're seeing to what happened in Paris. He says, you need to remember, humans have created this problem, and now we're asking God to solve it? That's illogical, and I agree with him. Humans made this problem. Humans made the wars. Humans made the refugee crisis. Humans in positions of political power made this problem. And now they want you, and specifically your kids, to go clean up the mess. They've had enough fun. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And not too unexpectedly, around the world, Muslim groups and organizations are holding public demonstrations, standing with Paris and denouncing ISIS terrorism. They understand they're being unfairly tarnished as a group for the actions of what appear to be false flag actors. And again, that's what happens. Hitler did exactly the same thing with the German people. These brown shirts carried out acts of terror that were blamed on the enemies of Germany, the communists, the gypsies. It's an old trick, but they keep going back to it because up until now, it worked. We have tons of calls waiting on the line. Let's grab a few. Mo in Florida, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike, for taking my call. I just, I don't know. You know, sometimes I just wish I would turn this channel off, but I know you tell the truth. And, you know, I don't know if you listened to the Ron Paul speech at the Mises Institute where he talked about the Doctors Without Borders hospital being bombed, and then how the patients and doctors were running out, streaming out, and the gunships just mowed them down. We're worried about this ISIS thing and this airplane crash, and our military nobody denies it. They just destroyed this hospital with people recovering from wounds and doctors serving for free, and not only mowed it down, but like I know you're aware of, they went over with afterwards with a tank to destroy the evidence. And this, how, like you said, the best way for a dictatorship to be exposed is to act, you know, to get them to act like a dictatorship. How can these people watch this mainstream media and they don't even talk about this? This is hideous.
It is. It's a war crime. Doctors Without Borders has denounced it as a war crime, and the U.S. surrogate in Yemen has done the same thing. Saudi Arabia has destroyed 2 Doctors Without Borders hospitals. Even the British government says it's time for Saudi Arabia to be hauled up on war crimes charges because they're always targeting medical facilities. And it's absolutely right. You know, the U.S. government was committing war. It's been committing war crimes all along. It's using torture. I mean, how much more do you need to get before you understand? The U.S. government is the Fourth Reich right now in our own country.
Yeah, they're going for broke, Michael. I think, you know, they're going for broke.
They are. They have to go through and conquer the world, or they're all going to be looking at war crimes charges for themselves. Mo, I'm going to let you go. We got a bunch of callers here. I'm going to try and get through before the news break here. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Yeah, with this Paris thing, I mean, this was definitely, people need to realize, like a professional job, because it would have took them at least a month to plan. And then minus a month, you had the Russian airline blowing up. So, I mean, this is all one big operation.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, you know, I mean, if you just got to think, I mean, if it's one big operation, this had to be within the month since the Russian bombing, and it's already, I mean, remember, France moved their aircraft carrier out prior to the incident in France. So,
I'm worried that the policy is going to be to keep on carrying out more and more horrible false flag terror attacks until the whole world is willing to go to war. And again, that was what Hitler used to get the German people ready for World War II. countless acts of terror. Oh, how horrible. Our enemies are out trying to get us. And the German people fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, and look what happened to their country.
But Mike, I mean, the Donald Trump said it right with the Trojan horse. I mean, to infiltrate, they're making it so easy, you know, and then these governors are stupid because even if they don't allow them to come into that particular state, they can go into the state that allows them and they'll just cross through the country, no problem anyway.
Yeah,
so,
it has to be an all or nothing thing. And it's absolutely ridiculous, and we're going to be talking more about immigration probably in our third hour. But it is, and we're seeing all these policies don't make any sense when you look at them in the overview. Does it make sense to have attacked all these countries and then welcome all the refugees in without any checks on them, and then act surprised when terrorists show up? And we know for a fact because of Paris that terrorists or terrorist actors are using the open borders policy to go wherever they want by the tens of thousands. That's what's going on.
But between the plane and France happening, they have definitely sped up operations.
I agree, and I'm very concerned. I'm concerned about Thanksgiving, especially that Macy's parade and the football games. I'm concerned about Christmas. I think at this point, because they know they can't go to this well anymore, they're just going to keep on going with more and more horrific false flag acts of terror until everybody throws up their hands and say, save me from the horrible evil, whoever it is we're supposed to hate this week. Here, take my money, take my children.
On those ships Russia has over there, that France is meeting up with, those ships, including the missile cruiser Moskva, they are those other ships are, I believe, troop carrier ships. The Russians have that. Yeah, carry.
Well, the Kremlin is saying they're not planning on putting boots on the ground because so far the air war has proven to be extremely effective.
Yeah, how you like that video of the cruise missile, the YouTube video flying over somebody's area?
Yeah, somebody got that one here. Listen, Dustin, I got to let you go. I got two more calls I got to get to before the top of the hour news break. We're going to switch over here to Daniel in Canada. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hey, Michael. Just wondering, you were mentioning the NSA, and I'm just curious why Rita Katz is able to find these videos of ISIS before the NSA is.
Rita Katz...
not embarrass the heck out of us? Or what?
No, Rita Katz and her site intelligence group are a propaganda outlet. They're not finding these terrorist videos. They're making them. Rita Katz is very close with Mossad. She's very close with CIA. Her father was executed as an Israeli spy. And that's her job, along with Pamela Geller. Keep up the fear, keep up the terror, keep up the Muslim bashing. Because that's what serves Israel's agenda.
Exactly. I know where the next terror attack is going to be. It's going to be in Spain because Spain issued an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu.
Could very well be, or it could be up in Canada because Canada is now pulled completely out of the Syria operation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Trudeau is already getting heat for, being a liberal and et cetera, et cetera.
Oh,
so
well,
we'll see.
Well, too darn bad. But you're absolutely right. Spain could see the next major terror attack because of that arrest warrant against Netanyahu and others for the Mavi Marmara massacre. All right, we're going to let you go here, and we're going to try and squeeze John in Barbados in between now and the top of the hour news. What's on your mind? John?
Hello, Michael.
There you are.
Yep. I'm looking at this French thing, and it seems to be masterminded by some state actor. I don't think ISIS or any of these refugees were involved at all.
Well, they may have been suckered into taking part. I mean, they got to have some patsies, to frame that. I mean, when Hitler's people destroyed the attacked the radio station at Gleiwitz, they took along an actual Polish prisoner and shot him dead so the body would be found, to support the story that the radio station had been attacked across the border from Poland. So, they're going to have patsies, and there may be people working for ISIS not understanding the people work for are actually tools of CIA and Mossad.
Well, I would rather believe the survivors who are describing clean-shaven white guys rather than the media and the government.
No reason to disbelieve the eyewitnesses. Absolutely not.
Absolutely. And so, it was seen that this is a state actor. I mean, ISIS just couldn't perform it that quickly, with these the refugees have been moving in for a month, and it's going to take a lot of time to organize one of these various mass shootings in several places to be coordinated.
And again, the cyber attack on the French security services for 48 hours before and during the terrorist attack, that shows state sponsorship somewhere.
Exactly. And as for Syria now, these new flights of long-range flights of Russian bombers, the heavy bombers this time, not the ones that carry just 6 or 8 bombs. Now the heavy bombers are going in, and it looks like the Syrian army is now moving fast as well against various al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, ISIS components in Syria. And I agree with you, Michael. It should be over by Christmas.
I definitely think so. And once ISIS is gone from Syria, the U.S. and France don't have a reason to be there anymore because they are most assuredly not being welcomed by Syria's official government. We got to take a break for our news and top of the hour commercials. Thank you for the phone call, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. Phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. And we're going to go ahead and take a phone call now. Peter in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Michael. I just was going to, I know you know about this, but it's underreported, I think, even on your site. And I think it would be really educational for a lot of the people who have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that the American intelligence and the American government would murder American citizens or allied citizens in a false flight attack. And that's Operation Gladio. And I know you went over Northwoods the other day, but Gladio went on for 50 years, and I know one of the attacks was at a Milan railway station where American and British special forces and these agents they had in Italy, and they also did it in France and Germany and Belgium and the Netherlands. But in one attack alone, there'd be 50 dead. And it was always trying to, whenever for instance, this happened in Italy when a leftist election was coming up and the left-wing parties looked like they were going to make big gains, then they trot these Gladio under NATO, U.S. and MI6 control would trot out and carry out these horrible atrocities, blame it on the Red Brigade in Italy or the Baader-Meinhof gang in Germany, and completely switch the results of the election around, lurch the governments to the right, make them, give many Patriot Acts and tighten their security, make it a little more oppressive each time, and of course cement them in the American NATO British fold. So, but the fact that they've done that for 50 years and it's documented clearly.
Oh, there's no question about it. Since the end of World War II, the United States has tried to, overthrow the governments of 50 other countries. Some of them supposedly are friends, and they've succeeded about half the time. And whether you call it Gladio or agent provocateurs, going on in and committing acts of terror to blame on the targeted political party or individual, that's just part of the normal tools that they use all the time.
Well, this came about basically from their, and it was the genesis of the Special Forces, as a matter of fact. The first Special Force Group was the 10th Special Forces Group out of Bad Tolz, Germany at the time. Now I believe they're in Colorado. But at any rate, it was stay behind. And the lesson that they learned from World War II, of course, after World War II, we figured that the Russians could overrun conventionally Western Europe. And we wanted to have stay-behind cells. So we formulated the Special Forces with the A-teams configured to lead and train and medically supply and equip and communicate and so on and so forth for resistance movements. We also recruited local people, gave them ready-made false identities, caches of weapons and communications gear, trained them in places in Sardinia, in Corsica, in Greece, and had them all over the place in all the NATO countries. as stay-behind agents. And since one of the lessons we learned from World War II with the French resistance and the Italian resistance and so on was the most effective people in the resistance were the left wing during World War II. The communists were great resistance fighters. They already had secret cells. They were very committed and so on. And we didn't want to have to deal with left wing. You know, once we won the war after the stay-behinds came behind, we wouldn't have to deal with a victorious left wing underground. So we recruited right-wing, reactionary, horrible people, really, to be these stay-behind agents. And then we would start resurrecting them for these phony terrorist attacks. So, but the point is, this is all well documented, and I really wish you would link.
Well, I don't refer to it by name. Because obviously the original Gladio people from World War II are retired or dead, but certainly the use of agent provocateurs. One of the things I always like to point out is when there's an act of terror that supposedly this group over here takes credit for, it doesn't really make sense, okay? And the analogy I like to use is, would George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and the boys have succeeded in getting Britain out of the United States if they'd been going into schools and killing colonial children, burning down the local tavern, acts like that? And the answer is, of course not. When you are trying to bring about socio-political change in a country, you need popular support. Nobody is going to carry out acts that destroy their own popular support. And for that very reason, I think pretty much all acts of terror are false flags by somebody.
Well, let me say that these people aren't retired. That, by the way, Sybil Edmonds and James Corbett have done pretty good recent work on this.
Okay.
This is still ongoing, for instance, in Turkey and some places in Central Asia. But even in the 1990s, the EEC had hearings on this that were blacked out in the United States, but covered extensively in the European Parliament, and where they documented all this stuff, completely blacked out in the United States. So this is in the 90s, and I'm telling you that in other areas outside of the EEC, at least, it's ongoing, and probably still in the EEC as well.
Well, yeah, it's a permanent part of the U.S. Toolkit for keeping control over the countries. All right, Peter, listen, thank you for the information. I'll take a look further into it. We're going to let you go now, and we're going to switch over to Buell in Tennessee. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Sweet Pea. Love your show. I wanted to bring up those of the 31 states that are denying the Syrian refugees. I want you to call your governors and thank them. That's the first thing I did this morning.
It's up to 33 now. It's up to 33.
Is it 33 now? But yes. Because if there's not a vetting process, then no, hell no, you're not coming to my state. And what I did is I charted the 190 cities, or it's 190 cities. And lo and behold, my city was on that list. I tracked them down, found out exactly where they were located, and the placement of where these intake centers are is very, very interesting. And my location is directly behind a middle school.
Well, you know, I think every American needs to keep something in mind and have it in the forefront of their thoughts from now on. If there is a terror attack in the United States of America, it is the federal government's fault for allowing the terrorists in, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
In my particular area, I am in East Tennessee. As what has been shown, we are 45 minutes away from Oak Ridge, Tennessee. That's the Manhattan Project.
Yes.
And 5 years ago, we had a nun and two of her elderly persons with her not only cut through two fences, but get to the nuclear reactor at Y12. They threw blood and urine and graffitied the nuclear reactor. If it's that easy for a nun to get there, she spent time in jail. So did the other two guys.
Well, you know, in the realm, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're coming up on a commercial break. In the realm of terror, you know it's a false flag when it's designed to have maximum shock and minimal physical property damage. I mean, if somebody really wanted to commit an act of terror in this country, there are so many points of vulnerability that would cause huge permanent economic dislocation. And absolutely. Anyway, listen, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go ahead and grab another phone call. James in Ohio. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How's it going? Things are getting bad out there. I saw a retired general on Fox News last night, and after going on for a while advocating for war with Russia, he decried our mine shaft gap. And he said apparently now they're admitting that they did drop weapons in ISIS-held territory, but the idea was pallets of weapons are very heavy, so that they were trying to drop them on the terrorists and kind of smush them.
Okay. They could have dropped the Affordable Care Act on them. That's even heavier than a pallet of weapons.
Oh, yeah. That's all I got for you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. All righty. Now, turning to Ukraine. No, that hasn't gone away. Still problems up there. Donetsk People's Republic Defense Ministry says Kiev troops are shelling Donetsk outskirts and the airport. Still trying to get something going on up there. Now, here's where it gets interesting. A Ukrainian nationalist, leader of the Brotherhood, Dmitry Korchinsky, says that Ukraine is willing to offer asylum to ISIS terrorists in Kiev, declaring ISIS is our ally in the struggle against Russia. So everybody's on there trying to use this for their own particular agenda here. Saudi air raids have hit Yemeni provinces, and again, looks like civilian casualties, thousands. Yemen replied by attacking a military base on Saudi soil. And apparently they're being aided by the Saudis themselves because there's been another friendly fire accident where Saudi warplanes hit the positions of forces allied with the Saudi-led coalition in southern Yemen. So they're bombing their own people again, the fog of war kind of a situation. Now, Israel warplanes are continuing to bomb Syria, and Israel warplanes are bombing the people opposed to ISIS, which puts them in the potential for a direct conflict with Russia. In fact, a lot of people are saying Israel's been acting like ISIS Air Force in the region. We know that they've been giving them supplies. They've been taking wounded ISIS fighters back to Israel for medical care. And so Israel has decided as of tomorrow to bomb pro-Syrian government forces in the region Russia is protecting. Now remember back a week ago when Israel flew aircraft into Damascus and bombed the airport and a couple of other places. And everybody said, why didn't the Russians react? And I speculated that the reason was Israel was trying to provoke Russia into doing something that they could use to say, oh, those bad, mean old Russians, and crank up the war for real. And Putin didn't bite because all Israel was bombing were material supplies of which Russia has got plenty. And now it looks like Israel is going to try and provoke Russia again by bombing pro-Syrian government forces in an area Russia is known to be protecting. And I would hate to be those Israeli pilots who don't know what they're being sent in as sacrificial lambs, or maybe Israel got some of those remote-controlled aircraft that the U.S. has been developing. Meanwhile, Israeli leaders are exploiting the Paris attacks to justify their ongoing atrocities against the Palestinians. And we have some pretty horrific statements coming out of Israel. Dov Lior, I mentioned him yesterday, a prominent Israeli settler and rabbi, saying that what happened in Paris is a punishment for the Holocaust, which even if you accept the Holocaust as unvarnished truth, was done by Germany, not France. And apparently Lior was quoted as saying, "The wicked ones in blood-soaked Europe deserve it for what they did to our people 70 years ago." And Israeli journalist Dan Margalit mocked the victims and said, "This is, this is what you get for labeling products coming from Israel, from the illegal settlements, and all aid that Israel is going to send to Paris should come from the illegal settlements and be marked as such, to underscore how wrong it was for the European Union to demand such products be marked." Everybody is exploiting this tragedy shamelessly for their own agenda. Chuck Schumer is out there trying to put Israel front and center again, saying the West's war against terrorism is Israel's war. Forget about those Frenchies, this is still all about Israel. You have to pay attention to Israel. This is Israel's starring role. Meanwhile, Israeli soldiers have killed another 2 Palestinians in Kwalinda, a refugee camp raid. Just went on in and started shooting people, and then, as usual, blocked the access of ambulances trying to take the wounded away. Now, here in the United States of America, over at Northeastern University, an Israeli professor has been accused of equating the slaughter of Palestinian civilians by Israel to mowing the grass. That's how he describes Israel's actions in Palestine. This in the United States of America. And the Northeastern University Students for Justice in Palestine have filed a formal complaint against him. As well they should. I mean, if anybody came on out and said making war on Israel is like mowing the grass, what would be the reaction? By the U.S. government, by the corporate media? Now, over at Desert Peace, they've got an article about a new video released by Adala, New York, the New York Campaign for the Boycott of Israel, and it features 8 leading artists endorsing a cultural boycott of Israel. The artists include Tony-nominated stage and television actress Kathleen Chalfant, musician Roger Waters, musicians Kip Malone, Tund Abed, I'm going to butcher this, Adabimp of TV on the Radio, musicians Kool-Aid, Tamer Kali, artist and author Drawing Blood, Molly Crabapple, and visual artist Swoon. And of course, Israel's out there screaming, "You're a bunch of filthy, Jew-hating anti-Semites who want Hitler to come back and gas the Jewish babies in the ovens, blah, 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 blah." Now, as that caller mentioned, Spain has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and some of his other top officials over the deadly 2010 flotilla raid. Remember the humanitarian flotilla? Israel attacked it in international waters, murdered 8 people, one of an American citizen. Now, this flotilla was unarmed. And Israel basically just boarded the ship, and the American, Fergan Dogan, was literally on the deck under control, and they shot him in the head. Israel, of course, is screaming, "This is a provocation! How dare you issue arrests for us? We're above the law! Don't you understand that?" And so that caller may be right. The next horrible ISIS act of terror may well take place in Spain. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, returning to the situation in Israel, far-right former IDF colonel and member of the Knesset, Modi Yogev, has called for concentration camps in Israel in which the family members of Palestinians accused of attacking Jewish people, whether it's proven or not, be imprisoned. So now Israel's getting their own concentration camps. But Israel's concentration camps are good, and the Nazi concentration camps are bad. Now, all right, well, the big news coming out of Russia is the official investigators into the Metrojet crash have confirmed there was, in fact, a bomb on the aircraft. They're saying it was a homemade explosive device. And, of course, we all remember when it first happened. And Russia was saying, we don't know, but the West was out there screaming, "Oh, of course it's a bomb. ISIS did it." Yeah, well, they were selling this thing as hard as they can. And they were resorting to fakery to do it. You remember that footage supposedly showing the shoot down of the Metrojet, which was very easy to discredit because it was from the point of view right behind the aircraft, and the smoke plume from the aircraft was way too slow. And I did an analysis on it. It turns out the source of the footage has now been identified. It's actually from a video game called Arma 2. And they copied it off and they blurred the heck out of it, which is a dead giveaway that they're up to some deception. So, what's Russia going to do? Well, I think what's going on is Putin once again is proving he's the chess master. When the Metrojet first went down and everybody was saying, oh, horrible ISIS, it's all Russia's fault for going into Syria, and Putin understood that confirming the Metrojet was brought down by an act of terror would hand political fodder to the U.S. to try and pressure Russia into leaving Syria so that the U.S. could go back in to making war on Bashar al-Assad. And Putin didn't want to do that, and that's why they kind of stalled it. And now that we've had the Paris false flag attack last Friday, now Russia is acknowledging it was a terrorist attack in order to send a signal to the world that Russia not only has an equal right to be in Syria, especially because they've been invited by the Syrian government, but their right is prior to the claims coming from France and the U.S. that they have a right to go into Syria because of what happened in Paris, which tells us that Russia is not leaving Syria anytime soon. Now, so far their investigation seems to point at a baggage handler was loading passengers' luggage, obviously inside the security system, and obviously very able to smuggle a bomb on board. 2 airport workers at Sharm el-Sheikh have been arrested, and Vladimir Putin has issued a $50 million reward for information leading to those who planned the bombing of the Russian plane. And Russia predictably is saying, all right, yes, ISIS destroyed our aircraft, therefore we are right to intensify our attacks on ISIS, hence the cruise missiles from the submarine in the Mediterranean and the backfire bombers coming on in. And as soon as Syria and Russia get ISIS out of Syria, the U.S. doesn't have an excuse to go in anymore. Now, over in Germany, there was a big stink where the Germany-Netherlands soccer match was called off shortly before the kickoff on the basis of a bomb threat. There had actually been an earlier bomb threat, which turned out to be a hoax, but with everybody being extra careful, they decided, with the second phone call saying there's a bomb, they called off the match, sent everybody home, and apparently there were no explosives found in this case. Now, over in Hanover, near where the stadium was, where the football match was going to be between Germany and the Netherlands, there's a report that they found an ambulance loaded with explosives. And Associated Press is now reporting a second stadium has been evacuated. So it does look like the agenda is going to be more and more acts of terror until the world finally throws up their hands and says, yes, we'll go kill the people you want us to kill. Turning to the economic news, the yuan is about to grab the title of an official IMF world reserve currency, increasing its threat to the very unstable, unreliable U.S. dollar. Even more alarming, according to a story in Investment Watch blog, the United Nations is backing the effort to replace the U.S. dollar as the choice international trade and banking currency. And of course, when that happens, the U.S. economy is going to implode because we don't have the manufacturing and we certainly don't have the agriculture to keep things going. That's why there's this rush to get a world war going. The euro has dropped to its lowest level since April. Hedge funds are increasing their bearish bets against the currency. And here's a very strange story. The European Union has just lifted their Syrian oil embargo. They will now buy oil and gas from the Syrian terrorists. this soon after Friday, does that really make any sense? Because the propaganda has been, every time the United States has gone in to bomb a refinery or a pipeline or a storage facility in Syria, oh, it's because ISIS is selling it to make money to fight their wars. And so here we are just a few days after the tragedy in Paris, and the European Union is saying, yeah, we're going to go ahead and buy that oil to support the rebels, the anti-Assad forces. And just because they came over and shot up Paris is no reason to turn away from them here. All right, we're going to grab a phone call. Andrew in New York. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I want to talk about the Paris attack.
Yes.
And since there's proof that this is a false flag, I just want to point out something. There's people on the internet, I'm not sure if they're government info agents or people who just picked this up, but they're saying they were crisis actors, which is kind of baloney. There's no way that the government would have gotten in the way of people acting like if they got injured or something. I kind of find this to be baloney.
I think that the concept of the crisis actors is a little overblown, because if you think about the fact that there are billions of human beings on planet Earth, we all have doppelgangers. We all have people who look almost like us. In fact, the other day I was over at the office supply place. There was a guy there who was an absolute identical twin to the actor who's playing the current Doctor Who, Peter Capaldi. And I asked him, are you being chased around by Doctor Who fans for autographs? And he says, yes. Yes, I am. So I think the fact that there are people being photographed, that look very similar to each other, I don't see that as convincing proof that they are the same person.
Yeah, I know. And worse of that is the government is going to show this and debunk it. Says that's why you can never believe in conspiracy theories or
well, so many of the conspiracy theories have turned out to be conspiracy fact. We've got that story, 42 false flag attacks officially admitted to by various governments who use them.
Yeah, I agree. One last point is it looks like
Okay, I'm going to have to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the economic news. U.S. industrial production growth has slumped to its weakest since January 2010. We know the Baltic Dry Index is very low. Apparently, retailers understand this is going to be another terrible holiday shopping season, all the decorations and music notwithstanding, and they're just not placing orders for all that much merchandise. Mainstream media newspapers, the corporate media, is in serious, serious trouble. Readership of the major newspapers has plunged 80%. Now, the newspapers are all blaming it on the internet and electronic this and that. No, the reason the readership has plunged is nobody likes a liar. That's what it comes down to. Everyone talks about a war between the corporate media and the independent media, and it's being won by the independent media. Well, we cheated. We had the truth on our side. Here in the United States of America, car buyers now owe more than $1 trillion on their car loans. It's the first time they've ever had that kind of a debt load, because the cars wear out. They're designed to wear out. In 5 years for the low-end models, 8 years for the high-end models. And when you need a new car, you need a new car. And if you don't have the money, we'll loan you money. We'll loan you, give you the car loan. Here you go. Last time I bought a car from a dealership, and we negotiated a very good price. Unfortunately, it was a terrible car. It was that Xterra. And we went in to talk about payment. I said, what happens if we want to pay in cash? And they said, the price on the car would have to go up. You only get the discounted price if you're willing to work through our credit agency and plunge yourself onto that debt hook. Interesting statistic has surfaced from last year, 2014. The amount of money stolen from the American people by police in civil asset forfeitures is greater than all the money stolen from the American people by burglaries. The police steal more than the criminals do. That's something to keep in mind here. All right, so there's this article that came on out, how the U.S. government admits Social Security is going bankrupt, and warns the public should be given adequate time to prepare for the collapse. If you think you've got a retirement coming after all that money you paid into Social Security, we're sorry. It's not there. The money's gone. Poof. And we should remember, when we look at the coming collapse of Social Security, who did it? And that goes back to the administration of Bill Clinton. Now, arguably, Ronald Reagan was the one who established the legal precedent of Social Security loaning your money directly to the U.S. government. But the person who really abused it and put Social Security on the path to collapse was Bill Clinton. And we reprised our article on that to the front of WhatReallyHappened.com. Huge amounts of money. $100 billion at a pop. Almost $500 billion. And it was all considered a loan by Social Security to the federal government. And Social Security is now full of all these treasury bonds that this government cannot redeem. Remember, the economy was great, supposedly, during Bill Clinton's administration. That's where he got his budget surplus from. When he was out there saying, we got a federal government budget surplus, I'm a great president here. It's because he was looting the retirement money of American workers. And that money is not the property of the U.S. government. The government was supposed to act as a trustee for it, not just grab it and spend it. And there was a big cash buildup anticipating the surge of retirements as the baby boomers hit the retirement age. They had actually planned and increased Social Security taxes to have a huge cash surplus in the fund when the cash flow went negative. And Clinton just basically grabbed that and spent it as general revenues. And now they can't pay it back. In effect, the U.S. government has already entered a state of default. They're defaulted against you, the American workers. And that was Bill Clinton. And I think we maybe need to think that Hillary is probably of the same opinion. That money's just there for the using. You're there for the taking. It'll be some future president has to figure out how to make good on it all. Speaking of Hillary Clinton, she is still catching a huge amount of flack for her debate comment where she tried to defend her very generous campaign donations from Wall Street by trying to invoke 9/11. And it was ludicrous for her to do, and it's following her around, and she's very upset. You know, just because I said it is no reason to repeat it to me. You know. Hillary has gotten in kind of an automatic pattern. Whenever anybody asks her about anything that's going on around her, the email server, the giving of classified documents to her lawyer who was not clear to receive them, oh, it's another conspiracy theory. That's Hillary's new excuse. It's all a conspiracy theory. It's a vast right-wing conspiracy against me. I'm the victim. Vote for me as president because I'm the perpetual victim. Nonsense. Now, WikiLeaks has released an audio, actually 30 hours of audio recordings on a huge corruption scandal tangled up with both the Bush and Obama administrations. And it has to do with a program called Ability One. This was a program that awarded roughly $3 billion annually in government contracts, ostensibly for companies in which at least 75% of the work is performed by people with disabilities. Sounds like kind of a good thing to do, except it didn't happen that way. The money went out to huge companies with political connections who didn't have anywhere near that number of disabled people. It was just another form of payola. And the scandal's been building since last July, and now the audio tapes have come out confirming, yeah, this is what was going on. And it is a reminder that when the government takes money from you for a very beneficial purpose that you would probably agree with, there's no guarantee it will get spent there. Oh, we need to tax the carbon so we can save the environment. Oh, we got a war to fight. We're going to spend it on bombs and bullets and stuff. So let's talk here about the refugee crisis, because that is now a very hot topic. Obama is out there saying that the number of refugees being allowed into the United States of America from Syria and elsewhere, and who knows where with all those phony Syrian passports, will be increased to 100,000 per year. Now, that's insanity. We don't have enough jobs for our own legal American people. We have 94 million Americans willing and able to work who have not been able to find a job for years. And we're going to flood all these refugees and illegal immigrants into the country. And it's overstressing our infrastructure, which has not been maintained, let alone expanded to deal with the population increase. A big part of the reason there's a drought out in California are the millions and millions of illegals who drink water, cook, bathe, use up the water, and it's just not there. Now, at this point, as I mentioned to that caller, we have 33 governors in this nation saying they will not allow the Syrian refugees to come into their state. Absolutely not. And as that caller pointed out, we could have Syrian refugees who are actually terrorists go into a state where they are allowed and then just step over the border into wherever it is they want to carry out their mayhem. And as a matter of fact, one of the Syrian refugees who was allowed into Baton Rouge has now vanished. He's been there only a few days, and he's disappeared, and nobody knows where he is or where he went. Now, supporters of allowing refugees to cross all borders claim that anybody who objects to their agenda is heartless. But it is not heartless to refuse entry into your home of someone who may be a criminal, contagious, or a terrorist. It's just common sense. And where is the criticism of the heartless U.S. government whose wars of conquest made these people refugees in the first place? We're not hearing a lot of that, are we? Now, we got to take another break for our top of the hour news and commercials, and when we come on back, more about the refugees and a bunch of other stuff we got to cover by the end of the show. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. Let's take a phone call from Pat in Nevada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Israel.
Okay.
I am so sick. They are chronic complainers.
Yes.
No matter what it is, they complain about it.
Yes.
You know, they want to start a war. Who are they going to fight, kids?
Well, they have so far over in
right.
Palestine and Gaza.
You know, now they're going to set up concentration camps.
Well, that's just a suggestion from a member of the Knesset. They haven't actually said they're going to do it. But the fact that they're talking like that, I mean, should be very alarming.
You know, the terrorists want some place to attack. Let them do it in a series if they can get all the members of Congress working for a change rather than being on vacation or just not showing up. Take care of them. Get rid of them.
Well, yeah, that's not something that we can really get on board because we'll get a visit from the Secret Service here. But have you noticed that all of these horrible ISIS terrorists never attack Israel?
Right.
Yep.
They should. The Syrians should take back the Golan Heights. They treat the ISIS terrorists there. They supply them with arms, all the rest of it. But, we don't want to talk about that because it involves Israel. I'm sick of them.
Well, I think you have a lot of company on that one here. And the good news is, of course, that Israel's arrogance has grown so great, they don't even bother to conceal it anymore. And we all got to watch early this year when Netanyahu came on over and literally was trying to order the U.S. Congress to kill the P5+1 deal with Iran. And Americans got a wake-up call that we have a puppet ruler in Washington, D.C., a Vichy government that rules this country, not for the benefit of this country and the American people, but at the request of and for the benefit of a foreign government in Tel Aviv.
I don't think any American should vote for someone who has dual citizenship. You work for us or get the hell out.
I absolutely agree. We need politicians from top to bottom who are going to put America first, second, and third because that is the job they're supposed to have. Not make a bunch of empty promises to us and then turn around and sell us out to a foreign government, whether it's our tax money, weapons, or the lives of our children being rented out as mercenaries for foreign wars.
And one bit of what I consider possibly good news.
Yes.
There's a prophecy that says Hillary Clinton will be assassinated. Not a bad thing.
Well, I'm not real big on prophecy, and
neither am I, but that's one that could work out.
I mean, normally the Clintons are on the giving end of that sort of thing rather than the receiving end. I mean, let's be honest. Anything can happen right now. We're in a state of complete turmoil in this country, and anything is possible.
I think that would be a definite benefit.
Well,
their own medicine.
Like I said, we're going to have to cool that kind of discussion because you and I are probably going to get calls from the Secret Service. Not that I was that impressed with them the last time they showed up. So we're going to let you go. Thank you very much for the phone call. And there is a lot of anger out there. All right, we're getting on back to the immigration crisis, and Obama is out there, just getting on his high horse and huffy about all these Republican presidential candidates for talking as if they're tough on ISIS and stoking fears about the Muslim refugees from Syria. Now, I'm in agreement. All this tough talk about ISIS is coming from people who are never going to see a front line and probably don't actually know how to handle a military rifle, even if they did. And I will agree that the vast majority of the refugees coming into this country are probably just refugees. But there is no vetting process. And because of that, the wise and prudent thing to protect the United States and the American people is to just shut that door. We have a right to secure borders because secure borders are the first step to a secure nation. And as long as this harebrained open border immigration policy continues, if there is a terror attack in the United States of America, the American people should immediately say it's the fault of the federal government who let the terrorists in service to this new world order agenda of a blended global population here. And the anger is clearly building on this. It doesn't really make any sense. It didn't make sense when it was the illegal immigrants being welcomed on in to use up our resources, our infrastructure, our social services, because there aren't jobs for them. And there's an article coming on out saying, Mr. President, why are you still saying yes when we, the people, are saying no? And the polls clearly show, especially after what happened in Paris, and the fake Syrian passports that are a reminder that these guys came in posing as Syrian refugees. The prudent thing is to shut the border. I mean, let's use the government's own logic against them. Their logic is that when one person with their brain melted on prescription antidepressants shoots up a shopping mall, that everybody should surrender their guns. Okay, let's use that logic with the government. If some of these people posing as Syrian refugees are in fact terrorists, let's just block all the refugees. It's just the safe thing to do. And the promoters of the immigration open border policy, they're out there, they're desperate with their propaganda. They're reviving the stories about all the ships of Jews who were fleeing Germany and they were not allowed into Florida and they were not allowed to here and they're not allowed to there. Well, you know something? All of that happened a long time ago. Right now we have an issue that there is a demonstrable risk by just letting anybody into this country. Many of them are criminals. Many are carrying contagious diseases this country, and for that matter Europe, haven't known in decades. And all of a sudden it's there and they don't know how to deal with it. And because of Paris, we know that some of these refugees are potential terrorists. Now, the job of the government of the United States of America is supposed to be to look out for the welfare of our country and our people. How are they doing that with this brain-dead open border policy? They're not. They're going along with this globalist agenda of trying to drop all the borders and blend everybody together and make us all just a herd of undifferentiated human beings who can't remember who they are, what gender they are, but are just obedient workers to support the rise of a new feudal structure. Now we're getting more reports that once again the FBI is using their authority under counterterrorism to infiltrate and spy on peaceful protest groups. This is a repeat of what they did in the 1960s with COINTELPRO. And it had nothing to do with crime, nothing to do with terror. Had everything to do with sabotaging our legitimate First Amendment right to speak up when the government is misbehaving. Now, Germany's been caught in a huge spy scandal of their own, and a lot of people are saying after the big stink that Angela Merkel made when she found out she was being spied on, and now it's come on out, according to an article in Der Spiegel, Germany systematically spied on its own allies on a grand scale. And you know something? That's really not going to be too surprising. If you're in positions of authority and power in a government, you assume you're going to be spied on. The issue I have is the spying on law-abiding American citizens under the excuse that somehow this is going to win the war on terror, which is in and of itself pretty much of a hoax. We're going to take another break here for commercials. We'll be back after these few words. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, there's this really bizarre story coming out of Texas. It was reported on LiveLeak. And it shows just how completely over the top this whole political correctness, transgender, transsexual nonsense has really gone. And apparently at this school in Texas, a teacher has been fired for calling a girl because the girl in question identifies with being a boy and wants to be a boy. Now, biologically, physically, she's a girl. Looks like a girl. How's the teacher supposed to know whether to call the girl a boy or not? I mean, that's how absurd it's getting. You know, maybe put on a sign, please address me as a boy. And it's not even sure if the girl really thinks this way. Apparently, part of the issue raised is she's the daughter of a gay couple who apparently are trying to brainwash her about sexual identity, and it's caused a great deal of confusion. You know, it's like that other story where there's this boy who is physically a boy, hasn't been surgically altered, he's got all the necessary components, being ordered or being allowed to use the girls' shower and locker room because he identifies with being a girl. Ridiculous. Now, another story. Lily Grace Hooper, 7-year-old, suffered a stroke when she was just 4 days old, which has left her blind. Her school has banned her from using her little cane out of concern that somebody might trip over it. Now, I don't know about you. When I see somebody who's using one of those canes, I give them a lot of room just to make sure that there's not going to be anything happening to them. But that's how ridiculous it is. This girl needs the cane to get around, but she's not allowed to use it in school out of fear that somebody might just walk in front of her and trip over it. I mean, it's ridiculous. All right. Over at the University of Texas in Austin, students are demanding a professor to be investigated after he basically assaulted a group of students engaged in a Palestine solidarity protest. This is the professor of Israel Studies, and apparently was just before a lecture on Friday promoting the Israeli military as an offensive, daring, highly effective, and initiative-driven army. In other words, these supporters of Palestine staged a protest in front of what is clearly a propaganda campaign in what is purported to be an institute of higher education, and this professor of Israel Studies got in their face, and they're calling for an investigation. Because, and I think a lot of people on college campuses are really getting fed up with this. It is very obvious that institutions of so-called higher learning are no longer the places to explore new ideas that they were when I was in college. They've become the most rigid enforcers of the status quo, and like the public schools under Common Core, they are centers of indoctrination. You will love Israel, you will hate Palestine. You will love Israel, you will hate Palestine. Or you'll get flunked, or something to that. Now, as you know, we have this movement on college campuses and in cities across America, Black Lives Matters, as if white lives do not. And apparently their reaction to the Paris attack has caused quite a bit of negative publicity. They're not in the spotlight anymore. And apparently they're out there saying, God, that Paris attack, people are supposed to be paying attention to us. And apparently they decided to do something about it by staging what to me is a very obvious PR stunt. Over at Dartmouth College, where a group of the Black Lives Matter activists went into the library where students were studying peacefully, and they caused a ruckus, started banging on tables and shouting, hurled profanities, real brown shirt tactics. And they're not going to get a lot of public support for their agenda, but then I think this was done to try and get themselves back into the national media, and it did succeed. Now, over in Baltimore, in the period of civil unrest since the death of Freddie Gray, the homicide total has surpassed 300. They're trying to fan this up. They're trying to take it violent, to give the government an excuse to declare a national emergency, suspend what's left of the Constitution, and bring about the true fascist dictatorship they've been trying to build for all these years. Now, getting onto the world of computers, Edward Snowden, and I know I'm going to anger my advertisers with this, but it is worth reporting. He's urging Internet users to start using more ad blockers because of the growing problem of malvertising, where advertisements appearing on websites are actually being used to spy on you and plant malware. Now, at WhatReallyHappened.com, we go to tremendous lengths to try and guarantee the safety of the ads that we are running. We stopped allowing flash ads long ago because we got burned on one of those. And we'll go and visit the landing pages ourselves with all of our security turned on and see if we see anything. And if we do, we drop the ad. But it is a problem. It is a problem. And everybody who is either a web browser or a webmaster needs to be aware of it. Now, over in Michigan, there's been a growing stink regarding Hewlett-Packard, which had a $49 million contract over the last 10 years to develop the online vehicle registration system. And they failed to do it. The contract has been terminated. The courts have now ordered Hewlett-Packard to turn over the source code to the system so that Michigan can hire somebody else to fix it, move it forward. Normally, software companies do not turn over the source code. That is their bread and butter. They can adapt it to service other clients. But the courts have said Hewlett-Packard must surrender that source code. Now then, little comment about Jared Fogle. You probably remember him. He was the guy who was really heavy and he got really skinny, insisting that he was eating all of his meals at Subway. Subway picked him up, made him a media celebrity. And it turned out to not perhaps have been the best choice because Jared Fogle has been exposed as a pedophile. He likes sex with little children. Maybe they didn't let him in the seminary or something. And it's now come out that Subway's advertising unit knew of the problem all the way back to 2008. More about this when we come back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about Jared Fogle, the former spokesperson for Subway sandwiches. And this is not a hit on Subway. They make good sandwiches. Okay. But Jared became this big media celebrity when he had been very heavy and he lost a huge amount of pounds, claiming that he'd gone to Subway and eaten his meals every day there. And Subway grabbed him, made him a media celebrity. He became their spokesman, made huge amounts of money. And then it came out that he had a small problem with sexual interest in small children. Now, I'm nobody's example of how to live your life here. And when it comes to 2 or 5 or 20 consenting adults, possibly with common household appliances, fine, whatever you want to do. I get some real primal instincts that kick in when little kids are being used this way. That's just the way I am. And I'm sure the PC people are probably going to say, oh, no, you need to understand the pedophiles. No, I don't. I never will. And I'm not interested in it. So Jared Fogle had this problem. It's come out that Subway's advertising management knew of this all the way back to 2008. And they kept him going because he was helping them sell things and make money and all the rest of it. And then a new scandal has erupted over Jared Fogle's charity, his nonprofit organization to combat childhood obesity. Apparently, none of the money that was donated to that foundation ever actually went out to any kids. 60% of all the money collected went to the salary of the director of the foundation. 26% is missing, unaccounted for. Nobody knows where it went. Now, from 2008 onward, Jared Fogle's charity was run by executive director Russell Taylor, who happens to be good, close friends with Jared Fogle, and who is now currently in jail on child pornography charges, including allegations that he secretly videotaped children doing bad things in his house. Now, I'm not doing this because we're descending into celebrity tabloidism, but I want to point out, every step along the way, whether it's Fogle himself, the advertising management at Subway, Fogle's friend, it all kept going as long as it was making money. That excused everything. And I fear this nation being driven by the money junkies to be just like them has, like the money junkies, lost its moral compass. We seem to no longer have an instinctive understanding for what is right and what is wrong. It's what makes a profit, what can we get away with? And it really has destroyed what was best about the American character. And we should mourn that loss, because America's greatness was never about our weapons, our wealth, or our technology. It was about our moral leadership of the world. And to see this kind of behavior, not just here, it's widespread. Scandals throughout the churches. You have to wonder, what has gone wrong? And I think part of it is, we've just abandoned our inherent moral compass. We've gone too far into the Sidney Milgram mentality. If some authority figure tells me it's okay, then it's okay. I don't care. And I would argue against that. For the betterment of human civilization, we have learned to suppress our instinct to kill, to steal, to rape, not always successfully, but significantly. And I think for the betterment of human civilization, it's time to start suppressing our instinct to blindly obey, because it leads us into these horrible missteps. There is another aspect. And that has to do with all of this psychiatric medication that our society is drowning in. Now, we already established that as these prescription antidepressants flooded into our society, suicide went up, mass shootings went up, domestic violence, we tracked that. And one feature of all these antidepressants is poor impulse control. You get an impulse, gonna go with it. And I have to wonder if part of our moral decay comes from our own self-medication with these very questionable pharmaceutical products that are not well understood. Some of them don't even work the way they're supposed to. But they make money, so it's okay. Anyway. Now, Facebook has had to do an about-face. Facebook removed a British student's post criticizing the world for not responding to terrorist attacks in Lebanon and Africa with the same emotions and support and prayers as we saw in Paris. And Facebook simply took it down. Now, Russia Today contacted Facebook and said, why did you take this down? At which point Facebook put it back up, saying, oh, it was just human error. Really, we had no concerns with the content. It's just a technical goof. And we're seeing this not just on Facebook. We're seeing it on YouTube where certain videos, there's technical issues where you can't see them anymore. Not just the corporate media, but the corporate online environment has become compromised. And they're acting as censors and gatekeepers for the powers that be. That's a bad thing. Now, time for us to talk about human-caused global warming. As we mentioned yesterday, citing the Paris terrorist attacks as justification, France has now banned all rallies, protests, and outside unofficial meetings at the United Nations Climate Summit. And they're now saying that only the core negotiations will be allowed, meaning negotiations on the agenda they have been trying to sell. No dissenting point of view, no scientists not on board will be allowed in because they might all be terrorists. They could be carrying a slush ball. So they're using it as an excuse to basically turn this climate summit into a study in foregone conclusions. And they're in a race against the rapidly encroaching winter, by the way. Over at Investment Watch blog, an article, media ignores growing ice caps and continues to hype global warming. And I've noticed as we get into this winter, I get pictures from readers all over the world, the Northern Hemisphere, showing the snow coming down. And you don't see it reported in the corporate media. Or if it's reported, they'll say, oh, but back in, 1862, it was colder and more snowy. So see, this is the effect of global warming. Now, of course, they can't ignore it anymore. The central United States is being slammed with a huge, huge blizzard. I got an email from somebody this morning saying they're absolutely snowed into their house. Cannot get out, not even going to try. And I hope this Paris Climate Summit finds itself in the middle of a gigantic blizzard. And what is really amazing is the arrogance these people display, that they can go on lying and saying, oh, 2014 was the hottest year on record. And they actually think you're going to believe it if you see it on corporate media. We've got that big scandal with the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration issuing a report saying there's been no pause in global warming. It's been continuing steadily. Congress asked for the raw data and the methodology. NOAA's refusing. They refused a congressional subpoena, claiming that confidentiality protects their scientific process. It protects the lies is what they're doing. The essence of science is reproducibility. If NOAA really believed in this report, they'd release the data and their methodology and let other scientists go through the same steps and see if they come to the same results. If there's no reproducibility, there's no science. It's propaganda. To sell you a carbon tax to governments that are desperately, hopelessly broke and in debt to those private central bankers. Got to take a break for commercials. Back with the last part of our show today after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today on this Tuesday. We're talking about the Paris Climate Summit. They're going to be screaming for carbon taxes. And yes, part of the agenda there is greed. All of these countries have hopped on board the myth of human-caused global warming to extract money from a gullible population of planet Earth. But it's more than that. It's control. This is the beginning of the global government using the environment to get countries to allow an outside global authority to make economic decisions for them. Which countries can sell oil and gas, which ones can't. And years ago, back in 2009, I was saying the entire foundation for the global government is based on 3 pillars. Human-caused global warming, a global economic meltdown, which seems well advanced, and a global pandemic to sell everybody on the need for a global health authority. And once they've got the money and the medicine and the money, the energy supplies under their control, they pretty much have got a lock on the planet. And that really is the agenda. They don't care about the environment. If they really cared about global warming, they would say, yeah, you're right, the Earth has started cooling, problem solved, we'll go and find something else to make a fuss about. But they don't. They keep selling global warming, global warming, global warming, carbon, 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 carbon. It's not science. It's politics. And that's why we're seeing such a huge fight right now between the ones who are using false flag acts of terror to push a war agenda. It's collided headlong with those who are trying to use open borders to drop the borders and create a one world population. Be interesting to see how they try and sort that one out. The Syrians are committing acts of terror, but you're heartless if you don't let Syrians into your country, even though that's how they got into France. It really is very absurd about all of that. Now then, up in Canada, Canada's starting to sound like it might be a hip place to live. They're bringing back freedom of speech, and now Justin Trudeau has officially ordered Canada's Justice Minister to start the process to decriminalize marijuana. Wow. Canada's a great place to be. They're going to be under a lot of snow and ice this winter, unfortunately. Okay, current statistics. Prescription drugs cost up to 10 times more in the United States than they do in other countries. Now, remember, there used to be a big thing where people living near the Canadian border would drive into Canada and buy their prescription medication there because it was a lot cheaper. And then the U.S. passed a law prohibiting that under the excuse that the U.S. government, the FDA, couldn't guarantee the safety and efficacy of the drugs being sold in the Canadian pharmacies. It was a heck of an insult to the Canadians. And then, of course, it came out the Canadian pharmacies and the American pharmacies are buying their prescription drugs from the exact same factories over in Asia. It's protectionism. It's mercantilism. Same thing Britain was doing to the colonies in the run-up to the revolution here. Now, there's another story. This is very alarming. It's over in Natural News. You've probably seen these ads all over TV where if you've had chicken pox, the shingles virus is in you and you should buy another vaccine to protect against shingles. Well, there's definitely a market because the rate of shingles has been increasing since the 1990s. And they're now saying 1 out of every 3 adults will get shingles at some point in their lifetime. Some of them will get recurring outbreaks. About 1 in 5 will suffer severe and often debilitating pain known as postherpetic neuralgia. Officially, the cause of shingles is unknown, but recent studies are showing that shingles are hitting the people who got the chickenpox vaccine. I mean, we have reached a stage in our economic moral decline where corporations encourage illness and harmful products so they can make more money off of you down the road. Remember what I said about losing our moral compass? I mean, we live in an age where we know there's planned obsolescence. Whatever you buy, it's designed to fail at about the same time the financing ends, so you'll have to buy another one and go back onto the financing. It's not a coincidence that your average car loan and the lifespan of the car itself are both roughly 5 years. It's by design. See, what the car makers can do, just as one example, has to do with the body of the car. Now, some are made out of plastic, and plastic depolymerizes over time. And how quickly it depolymerizes is set by the chemistry. Now, back when automobile bodies were made of steel, they would be subject to galvanization, which is an anodizing process with zinc. And if you saw the metal before it was painted, you'd see this very interesting kind of crystalline pattern all over the surface. That's the zinc. And by controlling how thick that zinc coating is, you control how long that piece of metal will last before rust sets in. Once the zinc is gone, the metal is exposed, and the car starts to rust. And they intentionally give those car bodies only enough galvanization, zinc protection, to last 5 years. And that's why, at that point, the car starts to rust. It's intentional. It would cost them pennies to double the thickness of the zinc. But then the car would last longer, and you wouldn't have a reason to buy a new one. There was a wonderful documentary out there called Pyramids of Waste, also called The Light Bulb Conspiracy. I think the free version got taken down because it is a commercial product. And it was a very interesting detailing of how everything that we buy is designed to break and to fail. Look at the computer industry. The business model is you will buy a whole new computer and a whole new operating system and all new versions of all of your software every 5 years. And when the economy was strong, they could get away with that. Who doesn't want a better, faster computer? Who doesn't want more up-to-date software? But that was then, and this is now. We're very concerned about new operating systems that are acting as guardians of our private lives on behalf of corporations and government. And the sad reality is that the quality of American-produced software is in serious, serious decline. Look how often Microsoft has come out with their patches to various operating systems, second Tuesday of every month, and then 2 days later there's this panic call, don't install it, it's going to wreck it. Well, a few years ago, that was never heard of a Microsoft patch going on out and causing harm. Today, it's almost become the new normal. I know one of the problems as a webmaster that I have with online advertisements to pages with JavaScript ads on them. The JavaScript is very poorly written. Everybody's lazy. They dump all the variables as globals. And if two ads have the same global variable name, they interfere with each other. They lock up. That's a big cause of the shockwave player has stopped responding. Everybody's shaving corners, taking shortcuts, trying to maximize the profitability for their masters, the stockholders, and the banks who loaned them the money to go into business. We are a nation very much in decay. The Will McAvoy character on HBO's Newsroom was absolutely right. We're not the greatest nation on earth anymore. Haven't been for quite some time. And we are in decline. And the lifestyles of the 1% do not offset the decline in lifestyle, infrastructure, products, health of the ordinary American. All right, there's the music. I got to get out of here and do Jim Goddard's show up there in Vancouver. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, here on the Genesis Communication Network. Until then, stay safe, stay informed. Thanks to everybody who's been sending in donations, and I really do appreciate it. We really do need it. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Aloha, America.